This is more of a political video on the current issue. I had a student ask me in class about how does a federal judge stop a president of the United States? And this is really just an excellent question. And when you start taking the politics out of it, whether it's your person or not, that's kind of like the first indicator you're very partisan or political when you say, well, President Trump did this and this is horrible and blah 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 blah. Well, but so did President Obama. And then you say, oh no no no, there's all this and that. Okay, whatever. There's no difference. They did the same thing. So when the issue comes down to about the federal judge, that's the real issue. And so what troubles me as someone who studied government and pays attention to it is that there is one president and they are given an extreme amount of power in the Constitution. It's laid out. There's a lot of things they can do, and over the centuries have become even more powerful than probably the founders would ever think or imagine. They kind of figured it would probably work that way. Deep in their heart, they had to believe this. Even Alexander Hamilton understood it. It was setting the seeds in motion. But the question is how can a federal judge stop the president? And I think it's more of a question of if the president allows it. And every branch, according to Senator Rand Paul, has an ability to have judicial review. They have interpretation of the Constitution. I think Senator Rand Paul is very right on this point that why does the Supreme Court all of a sudden become the arbitrator of everything constitutional? Now, they obviously sit down and they're supposed to be nonpartisan, but we do see a lot of partisanship there. And these 9 men and women come together and they in essence make these decisions. Does that mean that Congress can't change a law subtly to make it like to override the Supreme Court? Well, yes, they can. Can they override Supreme Court rulings? Well, yes, they just change something and they just keep doing it until the Supreme Court can't change it. I mean, in other words, they can just in essence ignore them. I mean, and that's the real danger here is at what point can something be ignored or overridden? Does the president have to listen to that federal judge? Not really. I mean, what's the federal judge going to do? Okay, yeah. So then it goes to Ninth Circuit, and the president says, "Well, I ignore that too," and then it goes to Supreme Court. And while I think most presidents respect the Supreme Court, I think the Supreme Court would respect the president as well, and they tend to find a solution that resolves the issue for everybody. And they have it's not appeasement, but it's more of a, well, we're going to try to make this work, but we really don't want to strike down something because in essence, what they call it, the emperor of no clothes. They really don't have a way of enforcing things. So if they told the president, whatever the issue, you're not going to do this anymore, the president can say, well, what are you going to do? I mean, what are you going to do to stop me? So then they got to hope that Congress jumps in and says, well, we'll impeach you and kick you out. They got to hope that happens. Never happened before. Got close with Andrew Johnson after the Civil War and Lincoln. But having said that, you really have to start asking those questions. Is that, do we want a federal judge being able to stop a president? Because that's a very powerful little judge, okay? And how is that judge of a lower court or even a federal court, how can they stop the president? I mean, that's a big deal. There's a lot of judges. So in essence, what if all these judges get around and say, okay, well, we don't like this president, so every time they do something, hey, you buddy, you go file a lawsuit and we'll stop everything they do. Well, how does that work? That doesn't make sense. It literally cripple the government overnight. And it would cripple executive orders. It would cripple everything. In essence, the judiciary would become the government. And do we want that? But of course, if we take the politics out of it, we can say, well, that seems kind of dangerous. That seems more like a judicial autocracy, as Dr. Larry Matheny would say at Centre College. It's very dangerous ground to be on. We may not like what the president says, but would not the Supreme Court be the better check? Would not the Congress be the better check? But when we start sitting there letting judges of lower ranks tell the president of the United States what to do, to me that's dangerous. And so I'm not saying this just because Trump or just because Obama or just because of Bush or Phil and the president. This is for any president. Do we want that to happen? And that's a legitimate question to ask, and it's a very important one to ask. So really, the bottom line to it, I'm not an expert in everything Constitution, but I would think that the president could just ignore the judge if he wanted to. Now, I would suggest when it gets to the Supreme Court, the president would obviously give that respect and might not want to challenge that, or may say, well, okay, I respect what you're saying, but I'm going to change a little bit, and we're going to kind of have a compromise here. And that might be a way a president can challenge constitutionality and the judicial review aspects of the Supreme Court, while at the same time maintaining the power of the presidency. So that might be a middle ground for that. But if you look at it from a purely, like I always say before, the ends justify the mean mentality, that may work for you, but then when the next person comes up, you say, well, their ends don't justify the means, and you say that's fine, but because you did it, you did justify their action. And so you got to be very careful about setting precedent. And I think that's where we're at right now. A lot of people allow things to go under Bush and Obama, and now they're complaining under Trump. Well, you should have probably complained 16 years ago. Don't complain today when you might not like something. You should have complained 16, 8, 16, 12, 8, and 4 years ago. There you go. So having said all that, I think that's a good topic, really good question, and and best of luck in the class. If you need more help, always feel free to call me too. Thanks and best of luck.